This next piece is structured as a discussion. The speaker encourages you to think of questions, and you'll have the opportunity to ask them at the end. Now presenting Shubham Sadhuka with Cultural Differences in Education.
Alright, so as you heard, this is going to be like a forum afterwards. So first of all, I'd like to thank Shubham for the opportunity of providing such a forum. I think usually issues like this are not really discussed outside of the home, and it's definitely, I think it's a good thing that he took time out of this event to give us such a forum. I'd also like to thank my parents, because in a way I'm kind of criticizing a culture that they're part of, but they've done a lot for me. Speaking from my South Asian experience, I've been at somewhat of a crossroads my entire life. On one hand, I see the quote-unquote Western culture. On the other hand, I see the South Asian, or the Bengali culture. See, for most of you, you can probably relate in the audience. You know, you go to work, and your colleagues are talking about the Patriots or the Celtics or something you don't really know about, but you probably just ignore it. But for us, it's a little bit different. For us, or at least for me, it's every day, everywhere. You know, I can eat matcha jhol and bhat at home with my hands, and outside I go and it suddenly looks like vomit to others and to me. And forget about the hands, I would look like a complete mess like that. It's things like speaking Bengali at home and speaking English outside, which many of you do, but it's a little bit different. But I've noticed this kind of divide most in the way that we treat education. See, in South Asian or in Bengali homes, we think of education to be something like the parents have to be there. They have to be there 24/7 to tell their kids, hey, you know, take this course, be a doctor, be an engineer, be a computer scientist, take the AP chemistry exam, read this SAT chemistry book, take this course, take that course, go to this college, go to that college. Now, granted, this mindset did grow out of necessity. I know where it comes from. You know, India's living condition is a lot worse than here. People there are thinking of where to get their next livelihood. They're not thinking of like great metaphysical questions or contemplating God's existence. But that doesn't mean the system can be abused. It probably is being abused when people are losing sleep, when there's mental health problems going on in India. I don't know, somewhat here as well, probably. There's depression. So I will say that I'm being kind of a hypocrite here, because I've benefited from the system and you have benefited from the system as well. And I'm a product of this system. But we have to recognize that there are some bad aspects of our system as well, the way that we treat education. And we have to recognize that, okay, let's criticize those bad aspects while recognizing that we're somewhat of hypocrites. So what I want to say here is that what happens is when we tend to undervalue the process of thinking, the process of coming up with a solution, of discussing ideas, of deliberating through problems rather than the answer itself. If you don't know what I mean, imagine your kid got like a 96 on a test. I'm sure most of you would be happy parents. But how many of you would consistently, and there's no raise of hands here, just a rhetorical question, how many of you would consistently ask your kid, okay, where'd you go wrong? Is there a more efficient way to do this problem? Is there a better way to do this problem? No, most of you would just say, oh, good grade. And if it were a 78, then you would sit down. But that's not how learning works. Learning doesn't work based on a 0 to 100 scale where if you get a 70, then you're suddenly dumb. And if If you get a 90, you suddenly know everything. So what we tend to think, the Western education system tends to really emphasize this thinking through problems, evidenced by the age-old adage, do what you want to do. Greatness comes from within. It's all internally motivated. Now, it isn't that one system is always better than the other, because then we'd have figured out parenting, or at least someone would have figured out parenting, which, trust me, no one has. Now, let's see what I mean by this. My point is that greatness doesn't come from only within or only from circumstance. You know, the great football player, Tom Brady, New England Patriots quarterback, best football player of all time. Some people will tell you isn't, he is. So, Tom Brady, he's got his own reasons for his competitive drive. He was selected after 198 players in the draft. He was recruited by only one top-tier football team. He was the backup quarterback for like 2 years. But he's also had a great family, a supportive mother and father, and most of all, and most relevant to today, is that he's had Bill Belichick, who's a great coach. Bill Belichick is there to say, you know, condition your body this way, throw this pass, run this play. But he's not there acting to every finite detail, and he understands that he needs to cultivate a space where Tom Brady can grow, but grow in his own way. So tying this back into education, we need to recognize that parents are there to make space for the children to succeed, whether that be in art, whether that be in music, whether that be in science or humanities. Now, how many of you, and just think to yourself, have asked your kids to be doctors since a young age? How many of you have asked your kids to be engineers? How many of you have asked your kids to be something in the STEM fields? Now, those are all very, very good professions. I have no doubt about that. But how many of you have asked your kids to be artists, to be musicians, to be philosophers, to be politicians? See, that's a problem. Because all of your children are very talented. There's no doubt about that. But not all of your children are most talented as biologists or computer scientists. So what I ultimately advocate for is a compromise. That there are some aspects which are good of both systems. Well, what is this compromise? Well, I like to refer to Nelson Mandela in his book, A Long Walk to Freedom. He says it's really great. He says that great leaders mostly lead from behind. They put themselves in front when there's danger. So how do great leaders do this? Or should I say, how do great parents do this? Well, a great parent puts themselves in front when there's danger. If there's drugs, depression, if there's failing, there's no doubt that you go in the front. But for the most part, you are making a space where they can flourish in their own way. And that's what great parents do, that's what great leaders do. So I'd like to end with kind of like a cheesy quote that I made up, but I've noticed that cheesy quotes make messages stick. You may try planting a mango tree in Massachusetts all you want, but you won't get the fruit unless you plant it in Florida. Think about it, and any questions though?
Does anyone have any questions?
Shubham, I'd like to thank you for bringing up some very interesting issues. As a parent, I now feel I've sometimes failed. But the question I have for you is, your cheesy quote. You say plant mango in Florida. Is that what you are planning to do?
I mean, I'm not a mango farmer, but I assume that Florida has a good climate, so yeah.
Shubham, why aren't you a mango farmer?
I like to think of myself as a coconut farmer.
Yes.
Are your parents here?
Yeah.
They are great parents.
I agree with that.